He stood up in front of everyone at my engagement party, red-faced and shaking, and screamed, "No one would ever love you." The room fell dead silent, all the clinking glasses and polite laughter vanished in a single breath. But instead of crying or running away, I took a deep breath, turned to the guests, and revealed that I had secretly paid for the entire event myself. The venue, the catering, the band, all mine. And in that moment, everyone finally saw who I really was. Unstoppable, unbreakable, and fully in control. The evening started like a dream, one I had spent months planning down to the tiniest detail. The venue was an elegant rooftop overlooking the city skyline, strung with hundreds of fairy lights that shimmered like stars. A string quartet played softly in the background, weaving music through the hum of excited guests dressed in their best. This was my engagement party. The night I was supposed to finally step into my new life, surrounded by love, support, and champagne toasts. I had spent months making sure everything was flawless. The caterers had prepared a menu that tasted like art, the flowers were flown in from Italy, and each table was decorated with handwritten notes thanking every guest for being part of my journey. But perfection is fragile. And sometimes, the person you least expect can shatter it in an instant. As I circulated the room, my fiancé, Ryan, stayed by my side, his hand warm on my lower back. We smiled at guests, posed for photos, and exchanged shy, excited glances. The kind that say, "Can you believe this is real?" Then, in the middle of the main toast, I saw him. My ex, Chris. I hadn't even noticed him slip in. We had invited him as a formality. We had shared a circle of friends for years, and I wanted to be the bigger person. I told myself I was over everything, that he couldn't touch me anymore, but when I saw him standing near the bar, his eyes dark and glassy from too much wine, a chill spread through me. Before I could move, he stumbled forward, crashing into the center of the room. The quartet stopped playing, the room fell silent, and every head turned. Chris's voice cut through the air, sharp and ugly. "No one would ever love you," he yelled, his face twisted in rage and bitterness. "You're a fraud. You think this man actually loves you? You think anyone here does? You're nothing." The words seemed to echo against the glass walls, hanging above us like a storm cloud. For a moment, the world froze. I felt Ryan's hand tense on my back, felt every pair of eyes burn into me, waiting for me to break, to run, to prove Chris right, but I didn't. Instead, I felt something shift inside me, a deep, quiet rage that turned into something stronger than fear. I stepped forward slowly, letting the silence stretch. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my voice came out clear, strong, and steady. "Are you finished?" I asked, my eyes locked on his. Chris blinked, confused by my calm. The guests shifted, their anxiety turning into anticipation. I turned to the room, took a deep breath, and let my words drop like glass shattering on marble. "I need you all to know something," I said, raising my voice just enough for everyone to hear. "This entire evening? Every detail? The venue, the catering, the music, even the dress I'm wearing tonight, I paid for it all. Myself." Gasps rose around me. Chris staggered back, his face draining of color. I kept going. "I built my own company from the ground up. I funded every inch of this party with money I earned. So no, I don't need anyone's approval. And I certainly don't need to be loved by someone like you." The room erupted into whispers and shocked stares. Chris looked like he might collapse. I turned back to Ryan, who now looked at me not with pity, but with a stunned kind of awe, and for the first time that night, I felt exactly as powerful as I was always meant to be. The shock in the room spread like a ripple on a still pond. For a moment, no one knew how to react. Forks hovered mid-air, champagne glasses trembled in hands, and eyes darted nervously from me to Chris and back again. Chris looked like he had been physically slapped. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The arrogance that usually danced in his eyes had vanished, replaced with a wide, hollow panic. I stood still, my heart hammering in my chest, but my spine straighter than ever. I could feel the heat of every stare on my face, but for once, I didn't shrink away. A friend near the back finally broke the silence. She started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Soon, others joined. The hesitant claps grew into a wave of applause that filled the rooftop, echoing against the city skyline. Ryan turned toward me, his eyes glassy with emotion. Slowly, he brought his hands together, his face breaking into a proud, amazed smile. In that moment, I saw him truly see me for the first time, not just as his fiancée, but as the woman who had fought alone for her own worth. Turned to Chris one last time. "I think you should leave now," I said softly, but my words carried. Wait, his face turned a deep red as he looked around, realizing there was no support for him here. He stumbled backward, knocking into a table and nearly sending a cake platter crashing to the ground. Without another word, he bolted for the exit, shoving past stunned guests on his way out. A deep, collective breath swept through the room, like everyone had been underwater and finally surfaced. Ryan stepped forward and took my hands in his. "I had no idea," he whispered, his voice shaky. "I know," I said, meeting his eyes. "I wanted this night to be about us, not about me. But I'm done hiding who I really am." He pressed his forehead to mine, his breath warm against my skin. "I've never been prouder of you," he said, his words trembling with emotion. A few guests came forward, cautiously at first, then with growing warmth. One friend hugged me tightly, another simply squeezed my shoulder with a knowing look. "I always knew there was something unstoppable about you," one guest said, raising her glass in a toast. I looked around at the faces in the crowd, each one reflecting back a different mix of surprise, admiration, and something like relief. It was as though my reveal had given them permission to imagine being brave in their own lives too. Took a deep breath and felt a rush of cool night air fill my lungs. The string quartet, who had watched the entire scene unfold in stunned silence, slowly started playing again, a soft, gentle melody that felt like a new beginning. I turned to Ryan. "I don't want tonight to be remembered for him," I said. "I want it to be remembered for us, for this moment of truth." He nodded, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Then let's make it ours," he whispered. I raised my glass, my voice clear and strong. "To new chapters," I said. "To building a life out loud, without fear or apologies." The guests lifted their glasses with a resounding cheer. The rooftop glowed under the city lights, no longer just a party venue but a stage for my real, unedited self, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I owned every second of it. After the toast, the room shifted. It was as if someone had opened a window and let in fresh air. The tension that once hovered above us dissolved into something freer, more honest. Guests approached me in small groups, their expressions soft, their voices low and sincere. "I always felt like there was more to you than you let on," one woman confessed, her fingers nervously toying with her wine glass. "Tonight, you inspired me to finally speak up at work. I've been hiding my own success because I was afraid of looking arrogant." I took her hand gently. "Own it," I said. "You don't owe anyone smallness to make them comfortable." She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. Another friend, an old college roommate, came forward with a shaky laugh. "Remember when we used to sit in our dorm room and dream about starting our own businesses? I thought you gave up on that." I smiled, shaking my head. "I never stopped. I just stopped sharing my dreams with people who didn't believe in them." She pulled me into a tight hug, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Around us, conversations sparked in every corner, real ones, raw ones. People shared their fears, their hidden ambitions, the moments they almost gave up on themselves. It felt like my reveal had shattered some invisible wall that had kept everyone playing roles instead of living as themselves. Watched Ryan from across the room, talking animatedly with one of his cousins. Every few seconds, his eyes flicked back to me, his smile unwavering. It felt like we were meeting each other all over again, but this time without masks. A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. "Can I talk to you?" I turned to see my mother standing at the edge of the crowd. She looked hesitant, her hands twisting the strap of her small clutch. Of course, I said, moving toward her. She took a shaky breath. I didn't know, she started, her eyes searching mine. All these years, I thought you needed protecting. I thought you were fragile. I reached for her hands. I know, I said softly. But I needed to prove to myself that I could do it alone. And I did. Her eyes filled with tears, and she pulled me into an embrace tighter than any we had shared before. I see you now, she whispered. And I'm so sorry I didn't see you sooner. I see me too, I said, my voice muffled against her shoulder. When we pulled apart, something unspoken passed between us, an acceptance, a mutual release of old stories. The music shifted into a soft, romantic piece. Ryan crossed the room and held out his hand. Dance with me, he asked, his eyes shining. I took his hand, and he pulled me close. We moved slowly, the city lights spinning gently around us. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. This is the best night of my life, he whispered. It's the realest night of mine, I replied, feeling the warmth of his laugh vibrate through me. Around us, guests began to sway as well, joining in. The rooftop felt like a world apart from the city below, a little universe built on truth, strength, and love. As we danced, I realized something profound. I hadn't just reclaimed my story. I had given everyone in that room permission to reclaim theirs too. When the song ended, Ryan kissed my forehead softly before stepping back to let others greet me again. The rooftop had transformed. It felt less like a formal party and more like an intimate gathering of souls unmasked. People drifted toward the dessert table, the laughter now genuine, deeper, no longer forced or carefully measured. Small clusters formed, sharing stories they had never dared to tell before, and moved toward a quiet corner, needing a moment to breathe. I looked out over the city, its lights shimmering like 1,000 tiny dreams waiting to be claimed. In the distance, I could still see the street where I used to live in a cramped apartment, working late into the night while everyone else was out living their easy, glossy lives. The memory felt distant now, not painful, but powerful. As I stood there, a woman I didn't recognize approached me hesitantly. She was holding a small notebook pressed to her chest. Hi, she said softly. I know we've never met. I'm a friend of Ryan's cousin. I hope it's okay that I came over. Of course, I said, smiling warmly. What's on your mind? She hesitated, looking down at the notebook before meeting my eyes again. I'm an artist. I've been hiding my work for years because I was afraid no one would take me seriously. Tonight, watching you, I realized I'm not afraid anymore. My heart swelled. That's beautiful, I said. Please promise me you'll share your art with the world. Don't wait for permission that you don't need. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she nodded vigorously. Thank you, she whispered before stepping away, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. I turned back to the city and closed my eyes. The cold night air stung my cheeks, but it felt alive, like it was trying to tell me something. This is just the beginning. Behind me, I heard my mother's laughter mixing with Ryan's voice and my friends' excited chatter. It sounded like a chorus of freedom. I felt a gentle hand on my back. I turned to find Ryan standing there, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. Thought you might need this, he said with a soft grin. I took the glass, clinking it gently against his. To everything, I said. To everything, he echoed, his eyes locked on mine. We stood there, side by side, sipping in silence. It was the most peaceful moment of the entire night, a shared breath in a storm of change. Finally, I set my glass down and turned to him. Do you still want to marry a woman who doesn't fit in anyone's box? I teased, raising an eyebrow. He laughed, shaking his head. No, he said firmly. I want to marry the woman who built her own box, set it on fire, and danced in the ashes. I burst into laughter, the sound echoing off the rooftop and into the night. You know, I said, my eyes bright with excitement, I used to think love meant shrinking to fit someone else's world. But now, I think it's about expanding together, endlessly. He pulled me into his arms, his forehead resting against mine. Then let's keep expanding, he whispered. I nodded, feeling every beat of his heart sync with mine. As I looked around at the glowing rooftop, the city beyond, and the people I loved finally seeing me as I truly was, I realized I hadn't just survived the night. I had transformed it. As the party began to wind down, the rooftop took on a softer glow. The once ornate event now felt like a gathering of kindred spirits, no more rigid small talk, no more polished performances. Just raw, joyful humanity. A few guests began slipping out, each one stopping to squeeze my hand or whisper a quiet thank you before leaving. The string quartet, sensing the shift, played gentle, improvised melodies that felt like the soundtrack to a new chapter. I took one last slow walk around the rooftop, letting every detail imprint itself in my memory. The flickering candles, the half-empty glasses, the laugh lines on my friends' faces that felt more real than any decoration. As I approached the balcony railing, I felt Ryan join me again, sliding his arm around my waist. We stood in silence, watching the city breathe below us. You know, I finally said, my voice soft but sure, tonight didn't go at all how I planned. He chuckled. I'd say it went better than any plan. I nodded slowly. I always thought the biggest betrayal would come from losing money, failing in business, or some grand scandal. But it turned out the real betrayal was me betraying myself every time I stayed quiet to make someone else comfortable, every time I played small so I wouldn't outshine someone who never wanted the best for me. He tightened his hold on me, resting his chin lightly on my shoulder. Not anymore, he said. Not anymore, I echoed, a small, satisfied smile curving my lips. He stood like that for what felt like hours. The city lights blinked like a galaxy at our feet, each tiny point reminding me of the countless possibilities that lay ahead. Eventually, Ryan kissed my temple and went to say goodbye to a few guests. I stayed by the railing, letting the breeze wash over me. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Tonight, I didn't just reveal the truth to them. I revealed it to myself. That I am enough. That I am powerful beyond measure. That I don't need permission to be big, loud, bright, or fiercely independent. That the right people will never ask me to shrink. And that love, real love, celebrates expansion. I saved the note and took a deep, lung-filling breath. Behind me, a few remaining guests gathered to share hugs and say final goodbyes. My mother caught my eye from across the rooftop and mouthed, "I love you." I nodded, feeling the warmth flood every corner of my chest. A young guest approached shyly, holding a small thank you card. "I just wanted to give you this," she said. "You showed me that it's okay to dream out loud." I held the card to my heart and smiled. "Dream louder than anyone expects," I told her. As the last of the guests drifted out, Ryan came to stand by my side again. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," I said, feeling each word root itself firmly inside me. We turned toward the exit together, my hand in his, each step a quiet declaration that I would never again betray my own brilliance. When I stepped off that rooftop and into the night, I wasn't just leaving an engagement party. I was stepping into a horizon I had built with my own hands, a horizon where I was no longer hiding, no longer shrinking, but alive in every possible way. Sometimes the most powerful love story is the one where you finally fall in love with yourself first. Subscribe for more true transformations and stories of unstoppable women.